If you can only have one vehicle for off-roading in 2021, a side-by-side is the only choice. Yeah, I said it. What's happening, everybody? It's Nick Olson, Chupacabra Offroad, and this topic's been weighing a little heavy on my heart over the last year or so, and someone needs to say it. Someone needs to stick up for the side-by-side community, so might as well be me, right? What I mean is that, you know, you go on social, you go on YouTube, you see a lot of comments, a lot of us side-by-side guys, we get a lot of flack. The sand car guys like to bust our chops, the Jeep guys, the pre-runner guys, and, you know, it's fun. I'm all down for some good ball busting, but, you know, I'm here to tell you guys, don't take a lot of that stuff for reality. In my opinion, the reality is that a side-by-side is by far the best off-road vehicle you could own. And if you can only own one of these vehicles, it's not even a consideration of a pre-runner, of a sand car, of a Jeep. Don't even think about them. So I compiled my list of top 5 reasons why, but first here's the disclaimer. Now, I'm not a hater of any of these other vehicles. I've never owned a real pre-runner. I probably will one day. I used to have a wannabe pre-runner Ford Ranger back when I was a youngster. I've never owned a sand car. I definitely plan on owning one day, maybe a V8 pre-runner type sand car. It's always been my dream to have something like that with a ton of power. I did own a Jeep. It was my first car back when I was in high school, but I never really did a lot of like real Jeeping off-roading with it. But I'm a Jeep fan. I might own one, you know, as I get older, who knows. I do also own a race car in addition to my play car. And my race car is very similar to a pre-runner or to a sand car in the fact that it requires a ton of maintenance. You got to maintain it like a race car. You got to replace nuts and bolts and heims and tune it all the time and constantly checking every little nuance of it to get that thing operating at its peak condition like you would if you owned a seriously built pre-runner or a seriously built sand car. And speaking of race car, I've raced my race car on the same track that a lot of pre-runners and race cars had, Rage at the River in Laughlin. I've done some real rock crawling with some Jeeps in Moab and Sand Hollow, and I've done with Glamis with some sand cars. You can see all that on our YouTube channel. So being that I've been lucky enough to have all these experiences from Baja, rock crawling, dunes, pretty much anywhere in the Southwest, I'm here to tell you that a side-by-side is by far the best way you can spend your money. So over the last few months I've been doing some riding, and it's really inspired me to make this video. I kind of put these rides into 3 different buckets. The first bucket being adventure riding or a long multi-day trip. The second bucket being some more real rock crawling, and the final bucket being some duning and Glamis. Now, I have done all these trips on my 2019 Turbo S Dynamics with very minimal maintenance. It was go ride, change a couple little things, you know, obviously change your fluids, keep everything working good, and the car worked amazing in all of these conditions. So starting off with the adventure trip, I did a 180-mile ride in Mexico, and it was an up and back trip, so you got to be self-reliant. You have to carry all of your own clothes, you have to carry tools, you have to carry, you know, food and extra fuel. So the car is weighed down pretty heavily, and this ride has a lot of people that brake on it. It's a lot of sand whoops. There's some higher speed stuff, and then you're riding in deep sand along the beach. For whatever reason, this trip just sees a lot of people's cars brake, and my Turbo S worked perfectly. Filled it up with gas, washed it off when I got home, did my normal prep, and didn't even hesitate at all. We were going as fast as we wanted to go over some big whoops when the car was loaded down. Couldn't have had a better trip in the car. The second trip or trips I did was some duning in Glamis. Now I was duning with some sand cars over Veterans Day weekend. It was a family trip, so we weren't really going that fast. But then also we did Glamis New Year's trip where we shot a big video on our YouTube channel, and we were loaded down with 4 cars. We were pushing my Turbo S pretty hard because we're using it for some filming sections. We were getting chased by the helicopter. We did night rides. We had it loaded down with camera gear, 4 people in it multiple times. I even let one of our film guys drive it, and it never stopped, you know, it never had an issue at all. The car ran perfect. And the third type of trip I did was up in Sand Hollow. I really wanted to do some rock crawling, hadn't done any in a while, so while I was there visiting my family for Thanksgiving, I took my dad and we went and we did the Double Sammy Trail as well as another trail called John's Trail. The Jeepers give you like a 1 to 10 rating of how difficult it is, and both those trails are rated about a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10 on the Jeep, you know, hardcore scale, if you will. But Double Sammy is a pretty popular trail. trail. It was pretty much about my ability, and at the very end I climbed the chute, which was cool. Like a lot of people post the photos and videos, so I had to go up there and had to tackle it and mix up my riding from what I normally do at Sand Hollow, which is kind of fart around on the dunes or maybe do some longer rides around there. So all I really did to change my car, prepare for the rock crawling, is I removed the sway bars and I removed the rear mud flap just so they wouldn't get bent as I was kind of dragging my trailing arms on some rocks. So that's pretty much it. I dropped the air pressure down to 6 psi. The Razor worked amazingly well. It was really fun, and having the dynamic suspension, I could soften it up and then stiffen it without the sway bars when we were going faster for the remainder of our ride. 3 different styles of trips. My Razor worked amazing. I'm like, you know what? I gotta put some heat back on the sandrail crowd, the pre-runner crowd, the Jeep crowd. Like, again, we're always the butt of the joke, but nah, I've been all around, and the side-by-side is really taken over, and here's a couple reasons why. All right, guys, so let's get into it. Here are my top 5 reasons why side-by-side is by far better than any other off-road vehicle you can buy today. Number 1 is the 4-wheel drive, versatility, new skills, and confidence. Yes, the Jeep has 4-wheel drive. Yes, some pre-runners might have 4-wheel drive. Most don't. But 4-wheel drive in a lightweight vehicle is a complete game changer. If you're new to off-roading, or if you've even done it for a while, I'm not new to off-roading, but when I had a side-by-side, I got into situations where the 4-wheel drive kept me from not getting stuck. Be it the dunes, be it Ocotillo Wells, be it anywhere like that. And with the 4-wheel drive, you have that ability to pretty much do whatever you want, and it's very hard to get stuck. If you do get stuck, you've got a vehicle that's really lightweight and it's easy to push, or worst case, you get a quick tow out. What's really cool about 4-wheel drive too is that you learn different driving styles. You can learn to drive in 2-wheel drive if you want. It's fun, it's slower, but when you learn how to drive in 4-wheel drive, you're getting pulled through corners. You can corner a lot more aggressively. It's really fun, and you've got both of those available at the flip of a switch, which is a really nice thing to have. And you can really learn to become a better driver switching back and forth between both styles. Now, I wouldn't be able to do any real rock crawling if it wasn't for the 4-wheel drive. Check out this footage of me doing some rock crawling in Sand Hollow. I'm going up this trail, like I mentioned, double Sammy. It's about a 7 out of 10. You know, I'd consider myself pretty much a novice on the rocks. You know, I've been to Moab a couple of times, but I've really only had, I'd say, 3 to 4, maybe 5 days of legit rock crawling experience. So I get some of these obstacles, I freak out a little, I get a little bit nervous, and I watch somebody else go up it, or you just put this thing in low range, and what these side-by-sides can do is really amazing. I'm probably the most impressed with these vehicles in this environment, because maybe those obstacles, that type of riding is new and maybe more scary to me than everything else I do, but it blows me away what we can do. If you haven't done this type of riding, even if you're a speed demon, you'd also be surprised how spooked you can get going a couple miles an hour. So with my Razor, I'm able to tackle trails like this. You know, I've done Hell's Revenge in Moab, Poison Spider, Golden Spike, and more. I definitely wouldn't have the chutzpah to go through these trails in a Jeep. My Razor's got much better visibility, it's lighter weight, it's less expensive generally speaking than a lot of other Jeeps. So I don't feel near as scared about pushing or trying these obstacles where in a Jeep I'd be terrified. You know, you add a little bit bigger tires in stock. As you can see, I'm running my 33-inch tires. It really enables you to go over a lot of pretty difficult obstacles that most Jeeps you have to, again, have 33s, 35s just to even consider going over. So to sum it up, 4-wheel drive can make you a better driver. You can learn how to drive the vehicle in 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive, so you've got options. You can take it far more places. It'll really prevent a lot of situations like soft sand, a heavy 2-wheel drive pre-runner gets sunk, even a sand car needs to get towed out. The 4-wheel drive can get you in and out of a ton of sticky situations, which is an amazing peace of mind if you're new to off-roading or you want to try some new terrains that you've never tackled. So not having 4-wheel drive is something that the sand car guys and the pre-runner guys don't want to talk about, but what that also translates to is there's a lot less areas that you can go take those vehicles to. I've been to Coral Pink sand dunes. I've seen one sand car total in 7 or 8 trips. Every time I've been there, I've seen no pre-runners. I've seen some pre-runners out at Ocotillo Wells, but there's such a big car, it generally is kind of like big overkill for it. Like Ocotillo Wells is really fun with a lot of tight washes. It's super fun on a 2-wheel bike for some single track ATVs, and the side-by-sides can still fit on a lot of these faster, tight little wash trails. So Jeeps can kind of squeak through them going slow, but the pre-runner guys can really kind of really like run pole line it's a little bit overkill in my opinion for what type of riding the Acatia Wells has. Those big pre-runners really need a lot of open whoops so they can breathe. So you're really talking like Barstow, high desert area, you know, some sections of Baja, Imperial County, that type of stuff. But when I did a couple of Baja rides, I was really blown away how tight and technical a lot of the trails or former race course trails were there. And after you look at the race car results, it makes a lot of sense why class 1600 cars and UTVs do really well in the Baja races, because they're lighter weight, they're more nimble, and they can make up a lot of time in a lot of that tighter terrain that these bigger, heavier vehicles, trophy trucks, two-wheel drive cars just have to creep through and make sure they don't get stuck through, which is also a big deal. You know, speaking of Baja, you go to Ojos Negros, it's fun, it's wide, it's fast, you're ripping around, and that's what I thought a lot of Baja would be. But you know, I've done a couple 500-mile trips, and it's not like that for a huge majority, I would even say. I mean, obviously there's so many routes you could plan something out, but it was always my dream to have a big V8 4-seat pre-runner, and after doing a couple trips on my 4-seat Razor, I really think I've got almost probably the perfect tool for the job. Speaking of pre-running, I have seen some pre-runners out in Glamis, but I've very rarely seen one actually out in the dunes, particularly if it's two-wheel drive. You'll see guys with pre-runners, they'll go hang out at the drags, or maybe they'll hit Sand Highway and take it to the hill, and that's cool. I'm sure it's fun. If I had a pre-runner, I'd be doing the same thing, but to actually go take one around and go on dune rides, like I said, I don't think you see it very often. They're heavy. Most of the time they're two-wheel drive. So if you get into a pickle, you're going to get stuck. Who's going to pull you out of there? You know, it's easier said than done. So, all right, reason number 2. I'm calling this one, do you even know what you love? You know, I love all types of dirt. I like a little bit of mud. I like rocks. I like whoops. I like sand washes, canyons. I even like screwing off a little bit of snow. I don't care. I'm all about it. I love going to Glamis. I love going to Moab. But if I only rode Glamis, or if I only rode Moab, I would get a little bit bored. I just like variety. And the best thing about a side-by-side is you have the ability to kind of go try and taste different things. Now, maybe one day I'll get really hardcore into rock crawling. Maybe I'll build a rock bouncer buggy or a Jeep, but I have the ability to taste and see what it's like with my side-by-side and do some pretty aggressive trails to see if that's the flavor of off-roading that I like, or something that I'd like to do a couple of times a year maybe. Now, sand duning, like I love going to Glamis, and I really think there's gonna be a point in my life where I will buy a sand car and maybe just go hard at duning, you know, take several trips, try to spend 25, 30, 40 days a year out there for a couple years. But overall, I can't tell you how much I've learned, experiences, different people I've met. You can kind of get a better idea of getting in where you fit in, whether it's groups that are really into one style of riding or another, or having the ability to just kind of do a couple a year, you know, like Glamis is great, but after April it gets pretty hot. So wouldn't you like a vehicle that you can go take to a Utah trip, extend your riding season, you know, maybe do some foresty type riding, other type of things that you couldn't normally do. With a Jeep, you know, you can go do those things, but you're going really slow if the terrain's harsh. I don't know if you guys have been in a Jeep and tried to go over 20 miles an hour off-road, but it's not very fun. And that reminded me of, I did Arizona Peace Trail with my buddies. We were all in Razors, and we passed a Jeep on the Arizona Peace Trail, and a section that was particularly rough with some big G-outs, and it just looked completely miserable to be doing it in a Jeep, especially at the mileage that you wanted to do to go from town to town. I think it'd be a long day in the Arizona desert, which is pretty rough up near the part of where I saw this guy, which is out of Bullhead. And yeah, it didn't seem like near as much fun as what we were having. So until you've experienced it, you don't know what you're missing. And as they say, variety is the spice of life. So side-by-side wins again. All right, number 3, this is very important to me. This is how I look at a lot of this stuff, is the dollar to fun ratio. I'm obsessed with dollar to fun ratio. No matter which vehicle you choose, off-roading is not a cheap sport, right? You guys know there's the vehicle, there's everything that goes along with it, there's the expense of going and taking it on trips, the travel, the gas money. It's not cheap. And I do see a lot of YouTube comments where a lot of the Jeep guys just can't get over a $30,000 side-by-side. They think it's just crazy expensive. And I do understand that. You can buy a nice little used XJ. You can get a Jeep that'll do really, really well for under $10,000 for sure. Also, side-by-sides aren't street legal in most places too. So then there's that issue for a Jeep guys that have a hard time justifying the price. But again, going back to the diversity of what a side-by-side can do, you can tackle a lot of trails side-by-side with a lot lot of these Jeep guys in environments, like I said, Moab, Sand Hollow, etc., Johnson Valley. Side-by-sides are generally a little bit lighter weight, generally easier to fix, maybe, my personal experience, if you do break something, to get them in and out of a sticky situation, and easier to learn for sure. Now, the sand car guys would argue that for $35,000 to $45,000, you can buy a really nice V8 buggy, and they're not wrong. You know, that's about the same price as a accessorized setup side-by-side like my Razor Dynamics. And they're also right, there is no replacement for displacement. Having horsepower in the dunes is what it's all about. But you can be a diehard duner, you can pick up an X3, you can take it to one of these guys like Jeffrey's Performance who can squeeze a ton of power out of that thing. You can be running 225, 250, over 300 horse in a car that weighs less than 1,700 pounds. So with that kind of power to weight ratio, honestly guys, from what I've seen, you could probably hang with 98% of the people out in Glamis if you know how to drive. And I would also argue that that X3 is a lot more fun to drive in a lot of scenarios, like maybe smaller, tighter, choppier dunes, like the type of dunes you see over by the wash area in Glamis, or even tighter and more nimble stuff like coral pink sand dunes. So you guys, yes, the V8, yes, I'm gonna own a V8 car one day, but that's not to say that you can't have a ton of fun and be incredibly fast with a tuned side-by-side. Okay, reason number 4, I alluded to this a little bit, but I'm calling number 4 is your social group. Now, side-by-sides, as you guys know, are becoming by far the most popular off-road vehicle. There's far more people that own them, and it's gonna be easier for you to find a riding group or connect with a group if you own one of those as well. If you have a sand car, you might not be able to go on as many types of rides as your buddies with side-by-sides. Same thing goes for Jeeps, right? People have different speeds, different paces, different interests, and once you're figuring out what you like, you know, a big part of having a great off-road experience is having a fun group to experience it with. It's a very social sport, it's a family sport, so making sure that the spouse, the kids, all have people that they like to have fun and connect with can make for an amazing weekend, whether you're going fast, whether you're cruising slow. But with the side-by-side, you've got far more people that you can meet and interact with to find that group, and you can try these different types of groups. I'm lucky enough where I've got some friends that are really into the adventure rides, and it's really fun to go do a couple rides a year with them. I have some friends that are just hardcore duners and they live for Glamis, and it's fun to go try and hang with them. And then I've got some buddies that are in the middle. They like doing a little bit of everything, so it's really cool. Guys that like going to Utah, guys that like doing the rock crawling stuff. Everyone's got a little bit different interests and passions, and it's fun to interact with all those different types of people, and you're gonna kind of get a better idea of what you like, and maybe find the group that fits your needs, and you have some certain places and trips you guys like taking together. So hard to beat the side-by-side for the versatility to help you find the crowd and the experiences that can lead to you overall having a great experience next time you head out to the desert. All right, so moving on to my 5th and final reason why side-by-sides are the best is the lack of maintenance cost. Now, all you have to do is keep up on your maintenance and you will have a side-by-side that will run very good for thousands of miles. We recently shot part 1 of a maintenance review video of my car. My Turbo S has 2,000 miles on it. Made it that far with the stock belt. Other than keeping your air filters clean, blowing out your belt housing and blowing out the dust, dropping your fluids every 25 hours. These side-by-sides can be very reliable. Even if you do tune them, as long as you know how to clutch it correctly, you're not gonna have that many belt issues. I've heard of a lot of guys with over 200, 220 horse that have very reliable belts because they're tuned and clutched properly. So my race car is very similar to what a lot of sand car guys should be doing in terms of how they think about maintenance. If they're pretty easy on their car, they can probably go a whole season on their Heims, a whole season without checking their CVs, but it's still something that you have to do in the off season to make sure your car is running good so you're not that guy on the desert trips come your first trip in October. Another big expense sand car guys have to deal with is transmission issues. Now, if you have to pull your trans and have it rebuilt, that's a lot of money. That money adds up quick, plus the time and the labor to do it. Maybe you can get lucky, have your buddy come help you. Hopefully those guys don't have motor issues. They can happen. They are very expensive. From what I've seen with a lot of my friends that own side-by-sides, even with some tunes, the motors are extremely reliable as long as you maintain them. Like I said, some guys, they burn a lot of belts. Those costs add up, but I think when you learn how to drive with momentum, if your car is clutched properly or if you leave it stock, these things can be really reliable. You know, it's really hard for me to comment on the Jeep reliability. I mean, it just really depends on how hardcore you get. running bigger tires, you're gonna need beefier everything, you know, bigger obstacles, etc. What I know about Jeeps, I know a lot of those parts and accessories are not inexpensive, and you know, if you want to go do certain hardcore trips like going to Rubicon, going to Moab, you got to be prepared with all the tools and the beefy setup if you're running 37-inch tires, for instance. You know, same old thing, we're pushing these vehicles, things can break, things are heavier on the Jeep, but I'm sure when you break parts, they're more expensive to replace. You know, axles for side-by-sides are pretty ubiquitous and inexpensive. Belt's 180 bucks. I'm a big fan of the CVT for that reason. A CVT does definitely prevent a catastrophic issue with a transmission. Not that it can't happen, but you know, again, I think that happens pretty rarely from what I've seen. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know if you agree with what I'm saying or disagree. Again, I think as side-by-side guys, we take a lot of flack that it's for rookies, a lot of us don't know how to drive, anybody can go finance one. And some of that stuff could be true, but if you guys have seen the YouTube channel, you've seen the content we've been putting out, I've been all over the place. I've been lucky enough to be in all these situations, and at the end of the day, I'm still super excited and happy about my side-by-side. Do I wish I had a sand car and would go to Glamis sometimes? Yes, I do. I get a little bit jealous of you guys. The Jeep guys, not so much. Like maybe one day, or if we're out in the cold weather, their air conditioning and heater, it's pretty cool. But as a whole, I don't think there's a better way you can spend your money. The people I've met are amazing. Had a lot of great experiences with not that much prep, not that much maintenance, not that much hassle, not that many times getting stuck, and all that builds momentum to just have an overall great experience and excited to head back out to the desert on the next trip. So thanks for watching. If you guys like the content, please like and subscribe, and we've got a whole lot more coming your way.